Dear compatriots, the United Information Center is continuing its work. At the moment, I would like to give you a few words about the situation on the front line, and I will be ready to take some questions. As we have already mentioned this morning, the armed forces of Azerbaijan started mass bombarding of Artsakh peaceful settlements. We have already shown the appropriate photos. There are representatives of international mass media there, even though sometimes they are risking their lives as well, but they are representing the entire truth to the whole world. The Artsakh Defense Army has retaliated to similar operations of the Azerbaijani army. However, we are targeting only military units, exclusively military units, and working towards military targets. All the accusations of the Azerbaijani part are misinformation and are not based on the truth. As we have already mentioned, on the southern side, the opponent has launched a lot of forces, armed artilleries, etc. During the day, they even tried to represent some video materials about their presence in the Armenian armed military units. But this was another example that small temporary success they are trying to represent as a large success. Our commanders of our armies have maneuvered, and I have already said that you shouldn't stress the retreat or advance regarding a single military position or details about this retreat or advance. We have been we have maneuvered and we have managed to inflict heavy losses on the opponent. Over 200 casualties on the southern front line only today. The fights have been heavy, but we have been maneuvering, and now let them try to represent their success as they've been doing until now. We have suppressed them with considerable losses today. This is the situation on the whole. At the moment, unfortunately, I cannot give you concrete quantitative information about the losses of the opponent, armed forces of the opponent, because the combats were ongoing for a long time, but tomorrow we will give you the information for the past 2 days. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tatoyan, and then we'll take your questions. Thank you. Hello, dear compatriots. I would like to start my speech with congratulating all the teachers, because today we're celebrating the Day of Teachers. I would like to convey my gratitude to all our teachers, because we are proud of the fact that we are your students, we have been your students. I would like to mention that today our teachers are gaining the result of their education, as proved by the heroic efforts of all our soldiers. And now more than ever, the image of the soldiers, of the pupils educated by our teachers, is quite evident. I think this is the highest appraisal of the teacher's job. Unfortunately, both today and before, we have losses in the peaceful civilian population. We have losses, we have injured people. I would like to convey my condolences to the relatives of the peaceful population that were murdered as a result of Azerbaijani aggression. I would like to deliver my sincerest condolences to the families and relatives of the soldiers who lost their lives as heroes in this fight. And I would like to wish all the injured soldiers and peaceful population to get better soon. In the past few days, the work of the Ombudsman has been clearly targeted, and our objective was, starting from day 2, to find out to find out the logic behind the aggression and the attack of the Azerbaijani and the Turkish armed forces, because this is directly related to the human lives and right to human lives and to the destructions that are being caused. And it is very important for us to show the nature of the politics behind this, because ethnic cleansing, the objective of ethnic cleansing, is quite obvious to me here. They are using terrorizing actions against peaceful population. We have several factors here. From day one, they are targeting peaceful civilian population, civilian settlements. This is an obvious fact. This is testified to not only by the video materials that we have, but also the heavy consequences that we have faced. I would like to mention that they are using prohibited ammunition that is prohibited from the point of view of protecting peaceful population. It is important to stress that the attacks are both air attacks and ground attacks. Recently, when we finished our fact-finding mission in Gegharkunik region of Armenia and we published the data today regarding both Artsakh and Armenia, we can see obviously that the drones used are targeting civilian population in order to destroy. For example, in Gegharkunik region, our studies showed that the strikes were mainly done late in the evening or at night, when people are for sure at home and mostly asleep. Besides, all our studies and missions show that drone attacks, in case of Armenia, for example, were done against the civilian settlements where there are a lot of people. For example, it could be a bunch of a column of cars or a bus or a residential building, etc. This testifies to the intent of targeting civilian population and to inflict as many losses on the civilian population as possible. Besides, of course, in Artsakh, the drones were also used and inflicted even heavier losses, both on the civilian population and on buildings and infrastructure. In Armenia, we also had a victim, a civilian victim. We had injured people and also burned buildings. I would like to also speak about prohibited ammunition. Starting from day one, 27th of September, 28th of September, and also since October the 2nd until now, they have used LAR 160 and Smerch missiles. I would like to emphasize that in the international humanitarian law, these are prohibited weapons. The thing is that this cassette ammunition cannot differentiate between armed forces, objects of armed forces, and peaceful population, and therefore they are prohibited because objectively it is quite impossible to direct the strike towards a military unit. And it is obvious that these ammunitions and weapons are widely used in Artsakh as well. And this is also proved by by our proofs that we have gained, and we are going to send these to international structures in accordance with the appropriate procedures. I would like to emphasize that the criminal intent is also reflected in that these weapons target, in particular, densely populated areas. For example, Stepanakert, the capital of Artsakh, is continuously under the attack by these weapons, or Hadrut, the city of Hadrut, for example. The issue is that the heavy losses and injuries that are inflicted on people are impossible to prevent. Apart from this, if we take the targeted operations against journalists, especially international journalists, it's obvious that, again, it's impossible to speak about any differentiation. The state agencies of Azerbaijan, for example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan, is declaring that Armenia and Artsakh should be responsible for this. No. Under the circumstances, the responsibility does not lie with either Artsakh or Armenia, because neither Artsakh nor Armenia are attacking. It is important, in order to unveil the criminal intent, it is important to take into account the factor of the legionnaires. We have produced proof about the involvement of legionnaires, and the international procedures speak about the fact that the use of legionnaires, any type of involvement of legionnaires, are considered a crime. Furthermore, according to UN resolutions, the people who have done this should face criminal responsibility. Furthermore, all the situations where even these type of consequences have not occurred are still highly criticized. The UN resolutions have especially prescribed the prohibition of using these legionnaires, especially when they are used for prohibiting the exercise of the right of self-determination of people, because they're considered a threat to human rights. Another important factor that we should take into account is that the enormous wave of hatred and hate speech that we have against ethnic Armenians. This wave of hate and this hate speech has always been present, but since 27th of September, it has been more coordinated and is especially present in the social networks. We're speaking about dissemination of aggressive video materials. We're speaking about coordinated calls for violence and murder, and dissemination of materials calling for violence and murder. Our studies testify to the fact that these come from both Azerbaijani and Turkish sources. I would also like to emphasize that all these components that I have mentioned should be considered as part of one chain, as part of one phenomenon. So obviously, we are dealing with a policy that is promoting terrorism and also ethnic cleansings. This is important to underline. In this regard, the Ombudsman of Armenia, within the framework of its powers, because we are speaking about a wide range of violation of human rights, gross violation of international human rights, and therefore all the studies that we have initiated are continuously being sent to international structures. I would like to stress that the role of the international organizations is huge here. They have to take concrete actions here. The situation is not one where you can confuse with an international conference and raise a glass to it. We need concrete actions here, we need concrete steps here, because speeches or unaddressed actions cannot prevent these phenomena. These are deeply rooted actions that can lead to a humanitarian disaster, as they already have. Thank you. Taking the opportunity, I too would like to congratulate our teachers. And now we're ready to take your questions. Tatoyan, what is the number of the victims of the Army of Defense? Actually, we haven't summed up the results yet, so we don't have the numbers yet. Armed Day, Turkey is continuing to support the Azerbaijan in the armed conflict, and obviously we have information about Turkish F-17 strikers. Actually, F-17, there is no F-16, there's no F-17. Is the information confirmed? I'm not sure. Actually, this information appeared in the mass media. Yesterday, we saw a video of Azerbaijani soldiers that were running away from Madaris. Yes, we did show this video yesterday. Actually, today the same thing was happening on the southern front line, with the difference that we just don't have a video to show you from there. Is it possible to destroy the missiles in the air? It is possible, but it's rather difficult, and not all not all our forces can catch a missile in the airspace. Regarding the recent speech of the Prime Minister, would you give us some details? I think that the recent speech of the Prime Minister had some concrete messages, and there are no details needed. We have declared military mobilization, and this is a concrete action under the given circumstances. As you said yesterday, the Ganja, you informed us about destroying the Ganja airport. What have you destroyed today? Actually, we do not always give the names of the infrastructures that we have destroyed, but this doesn't mean that we haven't destroyed them. But we do not always give, it is not always necessary to give concrete details about destroyed enemy infrastructures. And the news is not static. The situation can change from minute to minute. And this changes are dynamic, because we are going to win. And if there are no more questions, Mr. Tatoyan, these are all the questions on my list. Okay, thank you. See you soon. Follow us from Yerevan, follow us from Stepanakert. We are going to work 24 hours a day.